Hello, I'm nahshondion, and you're watching Transbrations. In honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, today's special guest is Charles Rice-González, an LGBTQ activist, co-founder of BAAD, the Bronx Academy of the Arts and Dance, and an assistant professor at Hostos Community College. His debut novel, Chulito, received recognition from the American Library Association and the National Book Critics Circle, and his writings appear in over a dozen publications. He's a fellow of MacDowell Lannan Foundation and PEN America Writing as Activism. His honors include an Audre Lorde Scholarship from the ZAMI Foundation and the Lambda Literary Foundation, Dr. Berzon Emerging Writer Award, and he has awards from the New York City Council and Gay City News for his contributions to advancing the lives of LGBTQ people, and a Lifetime Achievement Honor from the Bessies New York Dance and Performance for his contributions to the dance field. Charles is the board chair for the Bronx Council on the Arts and the National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures, and serves on the Macondo Writers Retreat Advisory Board. Hello, Charles. How are you doing today?
Great, nahshon. Thanks so much for inviting me on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me.
It's a beautiful afternoon here in New York City. Nice and sunny.
It is. It is. NALAC, the National Association of Latino Arts and Culture. Sometimes I say cultures. Culture. It's based.
You're right to say cultures. There is an S at the end of it.
Oh, there's. Okay. So, cultures. It's a San Antonio, Texas-based nonprofit dedicated to Latino art and culture. How long have you been associated with NALAC?
Like, I think over 15 years, for sure. I think, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, maybe almost 20 years now. Maybe close to 20 years. Yeah, I first went to a conference they did in Kansas City and wanted to become involved. And then they started creating a grant program, and they invited me to be on the thinking panel to develop the grant program. And for me, it was just another way to be engaged. And I think it's also helped me as a writer. It's helped me in the sense that when Chulito came out and I was doing a book tour, like by then I had known people all over the country so that I could call on them, right? I did that with lots of other things. But yeah, I've been involved with them for a long time, and I've been chair for a long time. And right now we're just working through a leadership transition, so which is a big task. So I think that's my last big task. And then I hope to stay with the board, but also create space for other leadership so other people can chair it and lead it, right?
And NALAC is dedicated towards the promotion of Latino art and artists in the United States and Latin America. It supports 900 artists and art-based organizations. Since its founding in 1989, NALAC has provided over $2.3 million in grant money to support over 185,000 Latino artists and art-based organizations throughout the region.
Yeah.
Including Puerto Rico.
Yeah. And we had a international program at one point. There was places in South America and Central America, and no, maybe not South America, Central America and Mexico as well. But NALAC has been like formidable in creating change, by providing resources, providing connections, providing network, providing training. They have a leadership institute, an advocacy institute. So it's really, like just showing folks how to be powerful and to thrive, right? So, and sometimes you just need money to get that started, and then other times you need skills and all of that. But NALAC is great. I mean, there's other leadership institutes. NALAC right now also is involved in the Intercultural Leadership Institute, where we work with a couple of other organizations, including First Peoples Fund, which is a Native organization, and Alternate Roots, which is not necessarily Black only, but Southern-based group, and a couple other ones, one based in Hawaii, the Pai Foundation, and
Cultural Leadership Institute, are really to define who we are as people in this nation, and where we are, where we're located, to talk about the places where we come from, places that many times have been overlooked and who have been treated as not having value. And so the Intercultural Leadership Institute is a way to uplift.
But yeah, I love that. And again, because I think that's something that maybe Latinos get. Latinos understand intersectionality in terms of race and in terms of community and culture. And if you think about historically, a lot of King and Cesar Chavez and even Malcolm X, there was this intercultural leader, like the woman, Yuri, I think Yuri's her name, forgetting her last name, I can look it up. When Malcolm X is shot, he's being held by this Japanese woman, right, who was right there with him, right? She did a documentary with Angela Davis, right? Kind of activism and work that happened, yeah, that happened across cultures, you know, that that's how we roll. Like I think a lot of the activists that work to create change understand the value of working across culture.
And that goes back to my question earlier, what I asked you about what is your perspective on intercultural dynamics and why do you believe it's valuable for diverse societies to understand and honor one another's cultural backgrounds and beliefs, which goes back to that.
The woman's name was Yuri Kochimaya.
Okay, I'm gonna have to look at that.
Yeah, she's fierce. And there's the documentary that's based on her and Angela Davis, I think is when Mountain Takes Wings or something like that. We showed it at BAAD. We showed it years in the old BAAD. We showed the documentary.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
I'll have to look at that. Okay.
And it's on, I think it's free online right now.
I attended the NALAC Leadership Conference, the Leadership Institute. Was happy when I got accepted. It was my first time ever to San Antonio. Oh, the food was great. The food, the going throughout the city, going to some of the cultural institutions, learning about the Latin culture in San Antonio, and we had a closing ceremony. Pardon me.
What year was that? Do you remember what year?
2017. And we
was
had.
That
yeah, you were there. Yeah, you were there because we have some pictures, and we were at a museum. We had a big meal at some restaurant, and it was
yeah, I know that restaurant. Yeah.
Oh, some good food. Oh, some good food. And so Rebecca Beltran was in my cohort.
Yes.
And at that time, she was working for United States Artists, and she told me that the CEO of United States Artists, I butcher her name, Dina or Dina Hagag. I butcher her name, and I just can't. Hagag?
I don't know.
That she was going to be there. So I went to that. It was a conference for the Alliance of Artist Communities conference, like artist residencies. I went and a whole nother world opened up for me with artist residencies and stuff. So it was just, it was great being a part of the NALAC Leadership Institute. And then it was great, good meeting Rebecca. And NALAC, I know throughout I know when they had that big storm, the hurricane in Puerto Rico, I know NALAC provided resources for folks in Puerto Rico. And then I know just with the pandemic, they were giving out grants to individuals. I can't think of the name of it though. So I was mentioning the support that NALAC has given to individuals in Puerto Rico when the hurricane happened. I think that was in 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in 2021, the assistance that they were given throughout the pandemic. You've been the chair of NALAC for almost 2 decades.
Oh no, well, maybe 15 years.
For 15 years.
Almost.
You did say that.
Almost, yeah. I think like maybe 13 years. Okay.
13. The CEO and president, Maria Lopez de Leon, she's led the organization for over 25 years and is now preparing for retirement. And today, Javier Torres Campos was named as the NALAC interim CEO and president. What's your experience been like working with Maria de Leon and the NALAC staff?
She makes our job easy, like the board's job easy. She's so together, so with it, so thoughtful, so resourceful, so smart, sharp. So, this is like it's a very emotional moment for all of us. Like for me, I just talk personally, of course, I'm the chair with all the stuff that I have to do and organize and share and, sign off and all that stuff. But Maria's a friend, right? We've become friends over these years. Like we've, survived the pandemic together. My husband passed away. There's all this. So, they talk about, being chair and leading an organization, but we're also human beings. And so we relate on that level. So yeah, so it's been amazing working with her. I've also learned an incredible amount from Maria and seeing how poised and how together she is. Like, there's a phrase, the leader, one thing we say in the Leadership Institute is the leader is not necessarily the loudest person in the room. You know what I mean? And Maria is not that kind of person. She knows how to turn up the volume when she needs to.
Mhm.
but otherwise she's not. She's a very different kind of leader, and I love that. She has left an imprint on the organization.
Mhm.
She will always be a resource to the organization, but
Mhm.
also can honor and thank all that she has given to NALAC and to the field all these years, and honor that gift that she's given by allowing her to retire and
Mhm.
us figuring out how to continue her legacy with. So anyway, so that's what it's been like working with her, and there's just, I'll use the word, there's a lot of love.
I was born in Ondo, Texas. It's the seat of Medina County, which is just 40 miles west of San Antonio. A small town where Mexican-American community, the Latinx community, does not hold political power, very much economically segregated and racist. My parents were very politically active. My dad, he was elected once or twice to city council. When Lyndon Johnson was elected president, my dad and mom received an invitation to the inauguration in Washington, D.C. And so when I went to school, my white teacher told me, my husband and I have been invited to the inauguration of Lyndon Baines Johnson, and I raised my hand and I said, my dad also got an invitation. And she looked at me and she said, sure he did, honey. After that experience, or those experiences, I didn't become helpless or cynical because I witnessed the courage of my parents and other leaders in that community as they struggled for justice, as they struggled for equality. When the Chicano movement, Chicano resistance, came around in the 60s and the 70s, I mean, we were ready for that. We'd been preparing for that all our lives, and I was already an adult. This was in 1974. Many of the Mexican children in school were being punished for speaking Spanish, just as I was. Children in first grade, if they didn't know English and they spoke Spanish in the classroom, some of the teachers would tape their mouths with masking tape and sit them in a corner all day. And so parents were fed up with that. And they had gone to the school board, speak to the school board, tried to change these things. Nothing would get resolved. It was already agreed upon, and they had talked to the children, and on one day, at a certain time, the children just walked out, even elementary children. We stayed out until we got some resolutions, and then went back to school. Observing the walkout made me think about arts and culture, because arts and culture had always been part of the work that we did, that my parents did. There was always music. There was always, the food. There was always dance. It is so rich and it's everywhere you turn. Arts and culture were weaved into our everyday lives. In addition to the work that I love and the field that I love, it's the family, la familia. That's the way I see NALAC. I see NALAC as a familia. You see here on this wall, and here, all of the classes, 21 classes of leadership training, 11 classes of Advocacy Institute, 3 years of Intercultural Leadership Institute. We always give them a candle, and I remind them to remember each other, and to remember their work and the work of their communities, and when they're struggling, to light the candle and remember that they have others that will support them, and to remember that you're part of a larger family, that you're not alone, that there is an organization that cares about your work and will support your work. And I see the impact that we've made. It really gives me a lot of hope. Several years ago, I went to an advocacy training in DC, and we actually were having a small meeting in the White House. A young woman used to work in the Department of Agriculture as an undersecretary. She came in, and after her presentation, she had mentioned that she was from Medina County. I went up to her and I said, "Oh, I'm from Hondo, and she said, "Oh, well, I was a state representative and I covered that region. And she said, do you know T.A. Lopez? He helped me so much with the campaign, and I'm forever grateful. And I was just aghast because that's my dad. And I said, that's my dad. And the tears flowed because I never thought that I would hear my father's name in the walls of the White House. The horizon for NALAC is very bright because of the many leaders, of the alumni, of the fellows. I see strength. My hope at the summit is that folks that will be participating will remember each other and remember that it's so important that they know each other, that they support each other, and that they continue to learn, to advocate, and to create that beauty.
And you just mentioned the pandemic. It's brought a lot of turmoil to our nation, leading to anguish, distress, unfortunately, a lot of suicides. What factors have contributed to your ability to maintain your emotional well-being since the start of the pandemic and up to now?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things was never losing sight of the importance of the work that we do, meaning like in terms of BAAD, in terms of my teaching, in terms of all those things, that there is a certain core importance to that. And so there were moments when that happened. I remember in my little apartment, I lived in the same building, but I moved upstairs to a slightly larger apartment. My little apartment, moments where I just felt so worried about what would happen with BAAD and with our community. And I think of all the artists that come through BAAD. And I would just be on the floor, flat, just to kind of feel grounded, you know. But then I would get up, Nahshon, I would get up from that and find out what the hell this PPP loan was and go through the drama and the thing, because I know at the end of the day, all these efforts benefit our community. And I'm going to say me, because I'm a part of the community. I'm not just being altruistic and doing this, sacrificing myself for others, but so I'm a part of the community. I'm totally nourished by the things that happen at BAAD. BAAD is a place for me to do work. So for me, it's never losing sight of that, right? Never losing sight of my students that were like, what the hell's going on in this world? I don't know, can I learn online? Just figuring that out. Because at the end of the day, I want them to succeed, right? So that's what gets me through it. And then literally what gets me through it sometimes is like good friends, right? Some yoga, right? Sometimes it's a nice glass of red wine,
Deep
right?
tissue massage.
So, right. And when we were able to, the minute we were able to get massages, I would get massages, all those kinds of things.
I was disappointed that Massage Envy was closed.
Right.
and you got to have a good chocolate bar, right?
Yeah. I'm more of a potato chip guy too. You need I love potato. Like if I could, let me see. If I could only eat three things, I would drink champagne, eat cake, and eat potato chips.
I love white cake with that frosting. I'm gonna read a quote real quick, something that you had said. I must have deleted it. It was something about you went to a Broadway show and it was something about wine or whatever, but you was like, you can get wine anywhere.
Yes. I always say I have better wine at home. That's okay. When I go to a restaurant, I'm like, I'm gonna drink this, but I have way better wine at home.
Oh wow. Well, you've seen a ton of Broadway plays. Which one has been your favorite?
Oh, I don't like it's hard to oh my goodness. It's hard when I get these questions because there's so many. And then, there's something almost like political.
I wasn't going to ask you though.
Oh, okay.
But I couldn't help it.
But I mean, I remember like going to see As Is on Broadway, right? When it came out back in the day, Bill Hoffman's play and that transforming me. I remember going to see The Normal Heart on Broadway and that, I remember taking my family to see Mary Poppins and seeing Mary Poppins fly. I remember it's, with taking my sister to see that. taking them to do cats, you know, like sometimes it's just like stuff like that, that it's pop and big and, you know, like so many things. But I think I remember like feeling a transformative experience when I saw As Is. And it was that was Bill Hoffman, and he actually taught at Lehman for a long time.
It's undoubtedly a fall day in NYC, crisp, chill in the air. The sun's light hasn't diminished, but its warmth has waned. I'm crossing the bridge from Harlem to the Bronx, Ubering to BAAD. We're still undoubtedly in a pandemic, masked and forging on to keep my art, my work, and my life, and my love and passions in motion.
Yeah.
It was a quote from November 2021 that was in the middle of the pandemic, I would say.
Yeah. It was still, that was like the up and down of it, right? There was like a moment. Yeah. Was it 20? Yeah, 21. Yeah. Just kind of that, it's the idea of persevering, right? And keeping, keeping sight of the things that are important. You know, I think of, one person that, believe it or not, is a woman named Mrs. Ross, and she was our landlady, and she's 100 years old right now, right? She's gonna be 101 in November, right? And I went to vote the first time Obama was running. I walked with her to the poll, and hearing her say, I never thought I'd live to see the day that I was going to vote for a Black man for president, right? So not losing, so it's all these things, right, that I do that I don't lose sight of, but always thinking of the people, like Mrs. Ross, like you, like we think of you a lot. Like that's how we call you and say, come do stuff with BAAD. I know that you're doing a lot of things in the world, and it's always remember to remember our community and to create opportunities in space. Like, we're working on something else, right?
Right.
It's always something, there's always an opportunity for us to work and to do something together.
And speaking of working and collaborating, doing something, just being an artist, before the pandemic started, what was the last artist residency that you were at? What year? Do you remember?
I can't. It was the Lannan Foundation. I did that one. I did that one in 2018.
In 2018, how have artist residencies impacted your career?
They totally have given me many ways. One is there's something about your brain and yourself saying, I'm carving this time. I could never, Nahshon, I've never only written at one of these residencies. From the very first one I did in 2005 to the last one I did, whatever, like 2 years ago. There's always been something else because of BAAD, meetings, work, I always have to compartmentalize my being. But the bulk of my time, most of it is being immersed in something. So a lot of that, so like Chulito, I wrote the full draft of Chulito. I had written bits and pieces at a residency in Woodstock. I was there for 5 weeks. At the end of those 5 weeks, I almost got to the end. I needed one more weekend. And then I went upstate to my friend's house and I finished the very end, just the very first draft, right? To be able to have that daily focus on and on, right? And I'm a worker. So like, I get up early in the morning when I'm at the residency, take a shower. By like 7 o'clock, I'm working, right? And I might work all day. And then when in one residency, I would be an executive director at night. So after I wrote all day, I would go to have dinner. And then at like 8 o'clock, I would go back to my studio and work for 3 or 4 more hours, answering email, responding to things, filling out a grant application for those last 3 hours. Where everybody else was like drinking and having a good time, celebrating the end of the day, I would go back and work. But that's how residencies have shaped. A lot of my major projects have gotten their full run. I can work outside of residencies, but that's happened. I said 2 ways. So one is that immersion and that daily dedication to lots of hours to work, not like, right? Because I think, but the other thing are the people, right? Because then you meet people and you vibe off of other artists and you have, so, I don't only work, but I mean, I mostly work the night in one of them. But I was also something that by 10, I would go back to the main space and then, but anyway, it's about connecting the way you met Rebecca. So there's networking.
Yes.
But it's that immersion, that space, that immersion to be able to like, it's
the time and space.
Yeah. Like right now, I write every Saturday morning. Like I have a group, we get together every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. We sign on and I work for 4 or 5 hours.
Virtually?
Yes,
Oh,
virtually.
you do a virtual writing workshop.
Yeah, writing group. We just write together.
Oh wow. Okay.
Share work, and it keeps me accountable. And every week, because sometimes there's always something that gets in the way, right? There's always a grant, there's always a this, there's always a meeting. I'm tired. I busy. I do work a lot, so I have to rest. But Saturday morning, I treat that sacred. Like I get up, even sometimes I only do 2 hours, but that means that every week I write. Like every week. Oh, I do writing work, like submitting stories to get published and stuff like that.
Right.
It keeps the creativity in play.
Do you remember your first writing residency
Yeah, it was the Bird Cliff
or
Guild.
artist residency?
Yeah, the Bird Cliff Guild in Woodstock. It was in 2005, and that's where I wrote Chulito, most of Chulito in that one. And I've done like a handful. I haven't done a ton, but I did that one. I did the Virginia Center for Creative Arts, and I was working on, in that one, I remember taking the book that I have, Hunts Point, and totally changing it, like making it present tense and first person. Like so take a whole novel and to change the whole point of view and everything from beginning to end.
I cannot imagine. I nonfiction is hard enough for me, honey. I could not imagine doing that with fiction.
And then when I was at MacDowell, I worked on a final draft of Hunts Point, but I was going to work. I want to work on a nonfiction book about basically my years of activism, in talking about gay activism in the 90s. It's called. It has a bunch of. I think it's like We're Here, We're Queer. Defiance, and Triumph.
Yeah.
A Bronx Queer History, something like that. It keeps how to keep changing, but I couldn't work on it, Nahshon. I worked on it a little bit because it was remembering. I spent a lot of time crying that first week because I would remember somebody that I thought that I said, how could I have forgotten this person, right? Somebody who died of AIDS, and I would just spend time thinking about them. So I would write some things down. I said, child, you're going to spend the whole freaking 4 weeks up here crying. You ain't gonna write anything. So I changed. After I wrote down some things, I did some work, I changed and I started working on something else. But yeah, that has been very challenging to write. I'll just say this. There's a man named LaVincent Lockhart. He was from, I think, St. Louis, Missouri. And I think I'm going to have to look this up because, memory. And he was like one of my best friends. And it's not that I didn't forget him. He's not who I forgot. But I didn't realize like how much I missed him, and in a way how I still grieved him. And to write about him was almost like reliving all of that again. So I had to find. So I did it. I did a writing workshop that a friend of mine did called Dying Twice. Right? Meaning when you're writing about somebody and someone was going through the whole emotional experience again. In the middle of the workshop, she gave us a writing prompt. And the writing prompt was something like, talk to them. Talk to whoever you want to. And begin writing, I remember when I found out. Right? And it took me there. Right? And it got so visceral in that writing workshop. It was like a Zoom thing too, that I turned off my camera and I was crying and hyperventilating. And I went to the bedroom I was staying in the house that I was in. It was in a residency, I was just away. And I'm there, like totally reliving the agony of missing my friend. And I felt, Nahshon, like that his spirit came to me and said, get up, it's okay. And I just felt like it was the weirdest thing. And then I struggled, but I got up and I was able to go back and continue writing to him. But it was just like that. It became that real. It was like that moment. I remember sitting in an office. I was working at an office and the phone ringing. And the minute I heard his mother's voice, I knew he was gone. Right? And I had seen him the night before. Right. So, yeah. So being able to write about those things. I mean, because you do nonfiction and the stuff you write about is quite visceral, right? And so for us to write about these things that are close to us, you're almost like reliving those experiences again. And then you do a certain kind of like taking care of your heart and your soul and your mind when you're writing nonfiction that way, right? So, yeah.
Is that when you wrote the 78 pages, 6 chapters?
No, that one. Then there, I wrote. So I stopped writing that, and I wrote an 85-page novella, at the residency. So I worked on something. I worked on the outline for the book, and I wrote a couple of chapters, but I didn't write about Levinson. I wrote about Levinson in the writing group. Like actually,
Okay. So okay, I see. Okay, I was connecting.
and that was just this summer. That writing group at the
Oh,
beginning.
that was this summer.
This summer, and it was just like I was just a friend of mine. She's amazing, Annabelle Santos, and she does these writing workshops online.
I've heard of her before. What was your friend's name again?
LeVincent Lockhart.
LeVincent Lockhart, a New York native.
No, I think he was from Missouri.
Oh, he's from Missouri.
He was a Southern boy, really beautiful. He played the flute. And he was a very musical person, but he was the classic AIDS victim in the sense that he had all the illnesses. He ended up, he had Kaposi sarcoma. His body was covered with with the cancer. And he was so like, I'm not only like a beautiful person, but like a beautiful soul. Just like, I will write about him more and about his mother who I met, and I understood where some of that beauty came from and that strength. From that woman that came in and was there with her son at the end, So,
wow, I didn't think you'd be. I didn't think it would bring up so much emotions, our conversation, but wow. Went for a walk in New Hampshire. I met MacDowell doing a residency in writing. I walked to think before I wrote. It just snowed and everything was crisp and clean, and the paths were like blank pages being filled with my thoughts and written upon with my footprints.
I can get poetic, right?
Yeah, I was like, all right, honey. Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah, no, it was. That's when I was writing at the MacDowell retreat, and there's something, a friend of mine wrote an article and she interviewed me for it, because the other thing though, there are you interviewed oh my God, she went to my school.
Jacqueline Woodson.
Jackie Woodson, right? You interviewed her.
Jackie Woodson. Wait.
Jacqueline Woodson is her full name, right? That's her. But she has a residency called Baldwin in the Arts or something.
Right.
Right, which is important for me because I think I haven't been to one like that. I would love to someday apply to it. But to be, but a lot of them, even though there are people of color, but a lot of these writing residencies were established by white wealthy people to create space for writers. But most of the writers they were thinking about were other white writers, right? And so,
whiteout, honey, just a whiteout.
Right? So then here we come, right, with our black selves and brown selves,
showing all your colors,
right, but also needing that kind of environment and space. So a lot of them have been, opening up and transforming for many years now for that. Still, but you do have to do. In my brain, that's why I was writing that. Like here I am, like I'm this kid from the Bronx, and I'm in the middle of New Hampshire. Like where I'm surrounded by white people. Like when you leave that residence and you go into town, that's it. You're there, right? You got to go shopping and go to the freaking Walgreens and do your thing, right? And they probably know, they're probably from the residency. That blackballed guy doesn't live here.
Yeah.
But so there is a certain amount of, I think, preparation you have to do to be in those spaces, right? And you find your people.
I applied for Baldwin for the Arts and I was rejected and I was disappointed, but such is life. Good luck if and when you do apply. It's a beautiful residency.
But try again, because that's what happens with me and other ones, that sometimes I don't get it, or I get on a waiting list and then somehow I get in.
Well, I'm excited because I'm going to a 3-month artist residency in California. It's one of the top 20, I think, in the nation, 18th Street Art Center. It's in Venice. So I'm going to be there for 3 months working on my documentary film. So I'm beyond excited. Like,
wow, that's beautiful.
Beyond. I've been wanting this since I found out about them in 2017 through the Alliance of Artist Communities Conference, and I met the executive director. I've been wanting to go. I had applied like 2 times before, was rejected, and finally got accepted and stuff. So really, really excited. Artist residencies. This is a quote. As a Black, Latino, queer, urban-based writer, I walk into residencies understanding that their origins may not have had me in mind. And this was in an article for Poets and Writers of this year, the spring of this year. It was on the emotional preparation involved for Black, Indigenous, people of color writers heading to retreats, which you just kind of alluded to a little bit.
Exactly.
You talked about while being at the retreat, being in that, same.
Yeah, I mean, and you get it. Like, I don't know if I mentioned this in the article, they made it in there. Like, sometimes you walk into these places and they're the portraits of the founders and the portraits of the benefactors. And then they're all these white people, right? So sometimes it's in those like signals. Sometimes, like, one of the things that people of color complain about at some of the residencies is the food. Like, sometimes the food is like, we're like, what the hell is this stuff? Right? This bland, this, that, and the other, you know what I mean? So it's like, they're not thinking about it.
It's a seasoning. It's a seasoning, not Goya. Is it Goya?
Adobo, probably.
I don't know, some kind of seasoning, honey. You got me thinking about it.
But people do that. I mean, I remember even when I went to like
Sasson,
right. So sometimes when you go to like, even I remember like when I went to Goddard to do my MFA, there was another colleague of mine who went out and fucking bought hot sauce because the cafeteria did not have hot sauce. And he went and bought a big bottle one day and walked in. He goes, "We got it," and put it on the counter, and everybody was cheering, But I think this is what I mean, that sometimes when you're thinking of creating a space that's welcoming to people of color, understanding like what do we see when we walk in? What are you serving, right? Are you taking inspiration that, not that you have to be serving, but thinking about just being considerate, right? If you want diversity, then the spaces have to change, right?
I went to an artist residency, Sandra's for the Arts in was it Kentucky? I forgot. And they slaughtered a lamb, and I'm standing by it. I was in the room, and it was just weird, but it was like it was on a farm, and it was a great experience and stuff. It was kind of isolating, but it was a great experience. And then I was at a Springboard for the Arts Hinge artist residency. It's a former Kirkbride Mental Hospital, which was in Fergus Falls, Minnesota. This was in 2019. This was before the pandemic. And it was quiet, it was snowing, it was beautiful, white community. And, I was walking down the streets on some days and had a wonderful time, had a really, really wonderful time. Did you experience any situations where that really stand out? Like, here they slaughtered a lamb, here I'm at this former mental institution, staying next door to this mental institution that's shut down, so, and it's snowing. So I'm feeling very much like, what were do you have any memorable memories that stand out, experiences?
Well, I mean, I would say in that vein, there was like one time I was doing that when I did the Lannan Foundation residency, and that's in a place called Marfa, Texas. And
I've heard of Marfa.
Marfa, okay. So, but Marfa kind of has a certain amount of like wealth connected to it as well in it. And so, it's special. Like the Lannan writers are here. And I was there during the 4th of July, and I was invited to a barbecue, right? And it was like, so here's the wild thing. I was like, where, this is not a barbecue, because there was like, but it was fancy. They had all this food but it was a spread, but I didn't see any grills or anything like that. But it's sometimes being inside of wealth that sometimes you have to like say, wow. And then of course, here I am, who's serving? Yes, right? It's the people of color, like the Mexican, people there. So of course I want to walk to them, I want to talk to them, I want to see them, let them know they're being seen, and relate to them as human beings, right? So for me, it's like, that's like memorable to be in this space, and I'm like invited guest, right? They're all like, oh, did you try the brisket? We flew it in from Dallas, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
You're like, oh wow, okay, that's great. I'm gonna try the brisket then, right? But then also going to get a drink from the Latina woman serving and saying hi to her, where people have, may not have been doing that kind of relating. So feeling like being in between those two worlds, So that's what, stands out for me. Like also not me for a moment confusing that I'm part of that crowd. Like I'm not,
Right.
I'm a
Gotcha.
guest there,
Right.
but
Right. Right.
I'm not a wealthy person. I'm like, I connect more to that woman serving a drink than a dude.
Unlike that other girl. You're not that girl.
No,
Yeah.
right.
You know, they'd be like, she's not that
Right.
girl. Yeah. Uh, before in that interview, you had mentioned about Chulito possibly being adapted as a screenplay. Is that something that still may happen one day?
I hope so. I mean, you know, it totally lends itself to the screen or to have an interpretation as a Netflix series or as a movie, something like that. Um, some production companies, when the book first came out, connected with me and they wrote, and I met with people, but there are a lot of people who didn't really have money, and I was in, not that, whatever. Of course, I want money, please, anybody want, but I'm not,
Pay me, honey, pay me.
Right.
Make it rain. Go on and make it rain.
But also for me, it's not like, but I also don't want to work like to write a whole screenplay for free or, without some kind of agreement.
Right.
I didn't have
right.
the so like, I'm not, anyway, so those are the opportunities that would be like, they would want me to work for free. These were like mainly
I see.
white people asking me to write a screenplay that would then maybe raise money. It was just too many maybes. So it's just like, I think I need a little more assurance. So I would love that. I think, I am Chulito doesn't exist as an audiobook. So I've been looking at making it like on Audible, like making it available on Audible. But, again, I'm trying to get the second book published, which is Hunts Point, and get that one out. I'm writing a third book called Long Island Boy that's set in 1983.
The who?
And that's that again.
It's you said it's set in 1983.
Yeah, 1983, and it takes place out in Fire Island, right? And it's about a young person discovering his queerness in this queer paradise at the same time as AIDS is rising, right?
Okay.
And then I'm working on a bunch of stories that are set in Puerto Rico, love stories, queer Puerto Rican love stories that are set in Puerto Rico in the Bronx. So that's the thing I did at MacDowell when I took Juncker, which is the name of the rainforest, and made it an 85-page novella. So I have several other stories that will go along with that.
It's set in Naguabo?
Yes. One of the stories is set in Naguabo.
Your grandmother's hometown?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of them is. And when I'm going to go to Puerto Rico this November, and I'm going to stay in Naguabo for a couple nights.
Your new novel, Hunts Point, it's the follow-up to Chulito. It's from the viewpoint of Carlos, Chulito's love interest, and at this point, it takes place 3 years after the summer of the love between the two young men after Carlos has graduated from college, correct?
Yep, that's it. And that one's a little, the scope is a little wider, right? Because it's the Chulito's really about their relationship. So it's kind of a closed kind of world that they're navigating these two. There's a bigger world around them, but it's really about their journey. Whereas even though this is Carlos's journey, the journey he's having is with more people in the book. There's some characters come back, some recurrent, like Kenny, his best friend, comes back. Julio, who owns the travel agency, is back and central to the story. So there's several people that come back and are central to the second story.
James Baldwin is an author that impacted your life. You mentioned his books, Another Country and Giovanni's Room. Next year is his 100th birthday. Do you have any plans to celebrate Baldwin's 100th birthday?
Oh my God. Then yeah, thanks for tipping me up. I'm always looking for that. So, Baldwin went to high school in the Bronx.
Correct.
He went to Clinton High School. So that makes me think, yeah, maybe I'll do something. We had a Baldwin reading series at BAAD. So maybe we'll do that at BAAD again, or do something at BAAD. Actually the happy hour, Baldwin is a character in it. In the happy hour, he shows up as a character in it. So, but maybe I'll also pitch something to Hostos, so we can do something at Hostos for Baldwin. I think that would be powerful to be able to do.
The literary event, Read Puerto Rican, you ended with the quote, "Celebrate your freedom to love." And I don't ever recall hearing that from you. How long have you been sharing that message?
Oh, it started with, so there was a person who was very foundational to BAAD when we were establishing it. Her name is Sandra. She's a sculptor. Excuse me. If you ever come to BAAD, you will see a sculpture of two men like in this wrapped up embrace. And that she called that monument the Freedom to Love Monument, right? And I love that idea, right? And so I always sign Chulito. When I sign Chulito with people, I'll give a message like, thanks so much for doing this, or great to meet you. But I always say, celebrate your freedom to love, right? Because I think love is, there's a freedom to it, right? Particularly as queer people in the world, that there's constantly a movement to try to squash that freedom. So that's why I say celebrate your freedom to love. Whether you're a queer person, own it, love it. Straight people, don't take it for granted. You have the freedom to love. So let's all celebrate the freedom to love. So that's why I love that phrase.
Got you. The Bronx BAAD, you mentioned the 25th anniversary is going to approach. What are the plans for BAAD's 25th anniversary?
Well, of course, we want to have a big party and want to have a fundraiser. Also working with a young person named Benedict Nguyen, who to set up several activities next year, an example for one that's taking shape. So we're going to have several anchor events. We have one, there's a writer named Larry LaFontaine, Dr. Larry LaFontaine. He wrote this book called Trans Locas, which is about trans and drag artists. And so we're working on putting together an event, right? Inviting some of the people in the book to come to BAAD and perform. There is a artist named Lady Kateria, who was a well-known drag performer. And apparently there's a film on her that's rarely shown. We're going to show that and possibly we're trying to animate this academic book. It's all in the works. It may change. We literally met with Larry this week. We're going to be contacting some of the performers to see if they're available dates in June to do it. There'll be other events that we're going to announce. We're going to hope to make an announcement September 26th. One of the phone calls I got while we were on this call is the people that are helping us do the announcement, because the date, we're going to do it in their house. They're having some work done, and so they want to talk about another date or another venue. So I have to call them back tonight. And at this event, which will happen in late September or early October, we'll do the announcement. And we're hoping to have the location for the gala, hope to have at least 4 events that we're going to announce that are going to take place. Of course, Arthur will do stuff. Arthur's actually doing something in January this year, part of the Naked Vanguard concerts that he's doing. So, so there's a bunch of stuff. The happy hour will be a part of it, all that stuff. Maybe you're giving me an idea. Maybe we should bring back I Just Love Andy Gibb for the fall. So next year.
Okay. The Association of Writers and Writing Program, AWP Conference and Book Fair, it's an annual destination for writers, teachers, students, editors, and publishers of contemporary creative writing. It includes thousands of attendees, hundreds of events and book fair exhibitors, and days of essential literary conversations and celebrations. When did you first start attending AWP?
I remember it was 2005. 2005 was a pivotal year because that's the year I decided that I wanted to focus and be a published writer. And so I had already met with Marcela Landris. This is giving me perspective on NALAC. So I met her at the conference, I think in 2004. And yes, so there we go. So I've been with NALAC for 19 years. So 2005, I went to AWP for the first time. I was totally an unpublished writer. I was just getting started. In 2005, I went to my first residency in Woodstock. That's where I did Chulito. And in 2005, I went to Bread Loaf for the first time. So I went to those 3 things. Literally, I drove from Bread Loaf in Vermont, straight to Woodstock to start my residency.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the next year I did VONA. The year 2006, or I did VONA. And then I started doing other writers' conference. I went back.
Who's your instructor of VONA?
David Mura.
And would that have been up in California in the Bay?
It was in the Bay. It was at San Francisco University, I think.
This panel, this is a quote, this panel is one of the reasons I go to AWP. These accomplished writers dropped gems of advice, encouragement, and strategy. Latinx writers writing queerness, queer families, and queer communities. This was the first year that the AWP conferences resumed since the pandemic had started.
It's just the second. This is the first year I went, but they did it last year in Philly.
Will you be going to the one next year in Missouri, in Kansas City, Missouri?
Yes,
yeah.
I will. I love going to AWP. I was trying to get a panel together because the book that my story is coming out in December. And I thought it would be a great panel to have, but I couldn't. I'm not the editor, and I was trying to organize it, and I couldn't do it. And then I'm in a book called Teaching Black, and I was trying to see if they would want to do it. well, but I couldn't get it together. But even if I'm not on a panel, I go because it's always a great opportunity to meet people and to network and to hear great stuff to get my own infusion.
It is. It is. I went once, Washington, D.C. was my first one, and I haven't been back since, but I'm going to, I plan on going to the one in Kansas. Yeah. The Bronx is often portrayed as an impoverished community plagued with violence and drug abuse. If you were creating a tourism advertisement for the Bronx, what would you highlight?
Bad.
Besides bad. I should have said besides bad. Besides bad. What would you highlight?
Of course, bad, but I would
right.
I love the Botanical Garden. The Botanical Garden is like one of the magical places in the Bronx.
When I first got here, moved here, I went, and I just went like 2 months ago because there was an artist. Her name is Ebony. I don't remember her last name, but she had this event. She had this installation all throughout, not all throughout, but in she had an installation.
Yeah. It's one of so the Botanical Garden, there's nothing that if you ever in the middle of winter feel like you can't get away and you want to get away, go to the conservatory and go to the tropical plant area. You'll feel like you're in the Caribbean, right? Yeah. It's just so beautiful and warm. So I would highlight the Botanical Garden, definitely like the Bronx Museum. I think the Bronx Museum is an important institution. I love our parks. I love Van Cortlandt Park. Cratona's an amazing park, right? A lot of events, right? A lot of things that happen there. I would highlight all the parks in the Bronx, Hunts Point Riverside Park. There's the Beretta Point Park. There is Ferry Point Park. There's so many parks in the Bronx that, particularly Bronx parks that are on the water as well. I love the Bronx, the parks. And then I would highlight some of the food. There's some really cool, fun restaurants. I mean, definitely the South Bronx, but like Zona de Cuba is like a fucking vacation. When you go up there, it's like a party on the top of the rooftop of the bank of the post office.
Do you go to the Bronx Brewery?
I have not been to the Bronx Brewery.
I haven't been there either.
I'm going to go to the Bronx Brewery because we were thinking of doing a Transvisionaries in the spring there.
Oh, so wow. Okay.
We want to go visit it. But there's some place called Suyo Gastrofusion.
I've heard about that place. I've never been.
That's near Jerome. That one is it's another great spot. And then there's some great spots, like Charlie's and Chocobar, the Cortez, and I would highlight, of course, give some love to the Lit Bar because it's a bookstore in the Bronx that Noel runs. Yeah, I mean, I could keep going about some of the different things.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, if you go down Pennyfield Avenue in the Bronx near the Throxneck Bridge, it's a beautiful view as well of the Throxneck Bridge in New York City and the White Stone and all that stuff. So there's a lot of beauty in the Bronx, and so
there is
like on up to the to the side faces the Hudson River, like Wave Hill and all that other stuff. So there's just a lot of that's what I would highlight. A lot of cultural institutions and places to go eat.
Speaking of the beauty of the Bronx, that's what my documentary film is going to show. It's going to show the beauty of the Bronx. I fell in love with Crotona Park. It reminds me of an area where I grew up in Altadena. And if you watch my last interview with this historian, I talk about Altadena and the mountains and just close to the wilderness. So I'm highlighting Crotona Park in my documentary film. Right. You mentioned the Botanical Gardens, and I was going to say I know that Arthur did. You guys did a major event at the Botanical Gardens. What was that called?
Yeah, I forget what it was called, but the dance he called was called Ritual Dance.
Lots of people have been devastated by this unfortunate natural occurrence. I thought that it was the moment where we needed to pay homage. We needed to be able to be quiet and to give an offering. At the moment, we are in that interim coming from great disaster to the possibility of hope and balance.
performed this dance piece, I don't know how many times, like 5 times a day over 2 or 3 days or something like that. For a while, also the Botanical Garden, was invited as a writer. I think they took it out. They had this installation. They invited a group of writers from the Bronx to write about the Bronx Botanical Garden, and I chose the Rock Garden, and I wrote about the Rock Garden. And for a while, they had a plaque with like my name and a quote from it, and then there was a little like QR code. Scan it and hear me reading the story of the Rock Garden. It was called The Soul of the Rock Garden. I don't know whatever happened to. I think it was supposed to be a permanent installation, but permanent is relative. I think they took out the installations.
They took out the installation.
Sofia Quintero. There was a group of writers that all did this project, but I think they ended up taking it out.
I remember I read with her at BAAD out there in the cemetery.
Right.
Bronx Scribes. I think it was 2015. During our conversation, you had mentioned that you were from Alabama, and all I could think of was the riverboat situation that happened down there with the chairs, the brawl that happened on the.
Oh yes, that went viral, right?
You heard about it, right?
Yeah. That's something that I think when I did all that ancestry stuff, I was trying to see if I would find any relatives that I could connect with. So I don't really know a lot about that history, but it's something that I would love to connect with and visit. Like, the same way I'm trying to explore my grandmother's hometown in Naguabo in Puerto Rico. I want to be able to find out like where my father's family was from in Alabama and just kind of visit the towns and see the people there.
What part of Alabama?
I don't even know. I don't know. Like, I don't know anything. I think I started creating a history in one of my stories, and I was using them, and I picked like, I forget what story it is. I gotta get in touch with that story. But anyway, I don't know, but we'll see what happens. I tried to get in touch with my cousin Anita, who is the only person I was close to. But she moved. When she moved, it was a time when there was like no internet, and we had our names in phone books and stuff like that. So I lost track. Right. And I tried to find her on Facebook, but sometimes women get married and their names change. So
that is true. You don't have those phone books still, do you?
I don't think, but I do have the address where they lived, the house. It was on Paulding Avenue in the Bronx. They owned. It was on Paulding Avenue.
So Charles, thank you for spending 3 hours with me
Damn, that's wild.
It is very wild for talking about the Bronx Academy of the Arts and Dance, Chulito, Soundview, being a Jehovah's Witness, Pedro, your first love, Wet Dreams, hip hop, artist residencies, NALAC, BAAD celebrating their 25th upcoming anniversary, your work in progress novel, Hunts Point, and the other one based on Fire Island. Thank you. I appreciate you for coming through and spending this time with me.
And thank you. I mean, it's been a journey and it's been actually wonderful. I love the different places we've gone together tonight. So I really appreciate that.
It was fun. It was cool. It was cool. Good night, Charles. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
You too.